everyone, it's Michelle here. Welcome back to Grounded Haven Homestead. Today is a huge seed starting day. I'm going to be starting all of our tomatoes today. I have 13 different varieties. Some of them I have grown before and some of them are new, but I also have a ton of other things to grow. I have lots and lots of flowers and also some basil. We are about a month before our estimated last frost date, so about 4 to 5 weeks. And this is probably like the busiest time of the seed starting season. A lot of things have to be planted in the 4 to 6 week window, so we're gonna be trying to get a lot of that done today. So let me just go through everything and show you what I am planting today. Let me go over the tomatoes that I'm going to be starting first. I have 2 dwarf determinate varieties, and when I say determinate, that means that it grows to a certain size and it doesn't get any taller and shouldn't really need a lot of trellising. I've heard that determinate varieties put out all of their flowers at one time, which is really nice if you want to do like preserving. I have found that I've grown determinate varieties where they don't produce everything at one time. The one that I grew last year had like at least 3 flushes of fruit, so I don't know if it's true that all determinates do that, but I have heard that. And that's just something to be aware of if you are looking for plants that you want to preserve the fruit from. So the 2 dwarf determinate varieties that I'm going to be trying out, both are new to me. One is called Tiny Tim and one is called Cherry Falls. I'm going to be trying to grow both of these varieties in our green stock. I think they'll be perfect because they stay so compact. This Tiny Tim one on the back of the packet, it says it only grows from 10 to 12 inches tall and 14 inches across, which is really tiny. So I'm really excited to try that and see if they can produce a good amount of fruit even on such a small plant. Both of these, I believe the fruit are small, like cherry tomato types. The next tomato I have is called Principe Borghese. This is an Italian heirloom, and from the reviews I've read that this one doesn't have the best flavor fresh, but that's kind of to be expected because this is actually a variety that you grow for sun drying or dehydrating, so that's what I'm going to be doing with these, and that's a new one for me. Next I'm going to be growing a classic Roma tomato, great for paste, sauces, and canning. And that Roma tomato is an heirloom. I'm also going to be trying out a hybrid variety of Romas. I don't know if these ones are determinates or indeterminates. I'm gonna have to double check. But these ones are called Plum Regal, and I wanna see if those do better than the heirloom varieties or if there's any difference. Next, I have some larger slicer types of tomatoes that are also determinates. The first one is called Ace 55. And on this packet, it says that it's good for canning, which is great because I do can a lot of tomatoes. And then I also have the BHN 1021 from Johnny's. This is the one I grew last year. It has a really nice flavor and texture. It was really good for fresh eating, and I also canned a lot of these and they did really well as canned tomatoes. A new one for me is Celebrity. This one is supposed to be really good. I think a lot of people do grow these, so I'm just trying these out and seeing if I like them better than the BHN that I've grown before. Then I am moving on to my indeterminate varieties. So these ones will need to be supported either with like a tall stake or maybe along a trellis. Maybe I'm gonna try the Florida weave method again. I'm not completely sure what I'm doing with my tomatoes this year, but I will figure that out later in the season. So first I have the Sun Gold, very classic orange, cherry-sized tomato, very sweet. That one did really well for us last year. Then I have the Mexico Midget. I grew this 2 years ago. It was very productive and the plants got really, really tall. And these cherry tomatoes are a little bit on the small side, really good for salads or snacking. Next, I have a new tomato for me called Pink Bumblebee. This, I believe, is part of the Artisan series and it's just really beautiful and I want to see how this one does. I grew another tomato in the Artisan series last year. It was the Artisan Blush, and it did taste really good, but I wasn't really that thrilled with like the disease resistance or the productivity. So I'm curious to see if these Pink Bumblebees are going to do better. They just look really neat, so I'm really excited to see those. And then I have 2 that I've grown before with really good heirloom tomato flavors. The first one is called Paul Robeson. And this one has a pretty dedicated following. On the back of this packet it says it's known for its distinctive flavor, smoky and earthy with a perfect acid sweet balance. They're really pretty. They're kind of like red with green, almost like brownish shoulders. And then lastly I have the purple Russian tomato, which I have grown before, but when I grew it, they cracked really badly because we didn't have any kind of irrigation setup back then. So I think just like the constant like drought and then downpours of rain would crack all of my tomatoes. So I want to try this again now that we have drip irrigation set up, because I really loved the flavor of these. They were probably like some of the best tomatoes I've ever had. So those are all my tomatoes. I have 13 varieties this year, which is a lot, and I'm only going to be growing a couple of each of them because I am still definitely new in my gardening journey, and I'm trying out lots of different varieties to see what I like and what does best. So that's why I just have so many, and I'm just going to be doing like 2 to 3 plants of each of these. So let me move on to the next things that I'm going to be growing. Just one random thing is rhubarb. I think I'll probably only grow 1 or 2 pots of this. I did try and start this with the winter sowing method, but I'm not sure how those are doing, so I'm just growing one of these as a backup. You are supposed to start these 5 to 7 weeks before your last frost date. And if I can get this to grow, they are supposed to be perennials, so that would be a really great perennial food plant to have. And then I have a few different varieties of basil. Some of these are for eating, but some of them are also for our cut flower garden, and for those varieties I am going to be growing a ton of them because they make a really nice filler. They're really nice and fragrant, and they produce really well. So first I have the classic Genovese Italian sweet basil. Of course I'm going to be growing this for eating. You can't have a summer garden without basil. Great for fresh tomato salads and also for making pesto, which I make a lot of during the summer and then I freeze for winter use. Then I have holy basil, which is a really nice medicinal herb. It's really good for making tea, and it's supposed to have a lot of really good benefits for you. The next one is Thai basil. I like to grow this to eat. It's probably one of my favorite basils. Obviously great in Thai cooking, and I really like it in stir fries. Also makes for a pretty good tea as well. But I also really like to grow this as a cut flower. So I will be starting a lot of these because I like to have them both to eat and also for flowers. The flowers are really pretty and purple, and the smell is just so good. It's kind of like licorice-y, a little bit spicy and a little bit sweet. I can't get enough of that smell. The next one is mainly just for cut flowers. It is lemon basil. I know some people would probably love the flavor of this. For me, it's a little too lemony. It almost tastes like pine sol to me. So I don't really like to eat this one, but it is great for cut flowers. It has beautiful basil flowers on those nice spikes, and the smell, of course, is really nice. Now I just have a bunch of other flowers, so let me go through those real quick. First, I have coleus, which is a pretty common bedding plant. And I do usually buy some coleus at the garden center, so if I can grow this on my own, hopefully that will save me a little bit of money. They come in all sorts of different foliage colors, and they're really good for part shade areas. Next, I have a couple of varieties of sweet alyssum, which is such a pretty delicate flower. I love to grow this especially as a border plant. It kind of smells like honey if you get really close to it, and it's also really good for beneficial insects. Alyssum is part of the brassica family, so sometimes it can act as a good trap crop for flea beetles or like anything else that would go towards your brassica plants. Next, I have agastache. I am only going to be starting maybe 1 or 2 plants of this. This is a perennial, and I do have one already in my garden that I started from seed 2 years ago, and it has survived since then, and I just want to add maybe a couple more of these around different areas of our garden. These make for really good plants for hummingbirds and butterflies, and they're also good as a tea plant. They kind of have like a citrusy flavor. There are a bunch of different colors of this too. I think eventually I'm going to get the different color varieties that Baker Creek offers, and it says it thrives in poor soils, which is always a great thing. Next, I have straw flowers, which were one of my favorite flowers that I grew last year. They're so pretty when they're fresh, and they also keep their color so they dry really well. This mix had a bunch of really beautiful colors, lots of really nice vibrant ones that are really good for drying. They grow super tall, so you get really nice stems, and if you use it as a fresh flower, they'll also last like 2 weeks in the vase, which is really amazing. So those ones are really fun. And then I have Rudbeckia, the Sahara variety. I have not had good success with this yet, so I'm going to try it again this year. This one is a tender perennial, so if you're in zones 9 to 10, it might perennialize for you. but for us in zone 7, I have to grow it as an annual. It's a really pretty drought tolerant flower. They have more of like a muted orange and red color palette, which is really pretty. And then lastly, I have a few different dahlia seeds that I want to plant. So first I have this variety from Baker Creek. This is a red variety, which I think only relates to the foliage because I did grow these last year and I would get like yellow flowers and orange flowers, but the foliage on these do have like a really nice red purple color. It's really deep and beautiful. And all the plants that I grew from this seed mix last year, they stayed on the short side. So they're really good as bedding plants. So I want to start a bunch more of these and plant them up in our front garden as a little border. But for cut flowers, I'm going to be growing from these seeds that I have from Floret. The ones that I grew from this packet were a lot taller and they were a lot more unique as well. There were lots of different shapes. I got like ball type dahlias, anemone type dahlias, decorative doubles and singles, lots of variety, and I really enjoyed growing them. It was always so fun to see what was going to open up and what the flower is going to look like. I don't have that many seeds in this packet, but last year I also collected seeds from the dahlias that I grew, and I'm going to start a bunch of those, and those should be really interesting to see what I get, to see if they like cross-pollinated in like a really cool way to create new flower varieties. So yeah, I'm really excited for that. Those are all the seeds that I pulled out today. There are so many more seeds that you can be growing in this time period, but I'm just trying to do it a little bit at a time, and this is already a lot to get started for today. So let me go out into the garden. It's a really nice day out today, so I think I'm gonna do all my work outside. And first thing I have to do is get my seed starting trays all washed and set up. Here are the trays that I pulled out. I have this tray that has 128 cells, I believe, and I'm going to be using this one for flowers. For my tomatoes, I am mostly going to be planting in these 4 cells, and I'm going to be showing you the method I do it, where I can plant multiple plants in each of these, and later on I'm going to separate them out, so that way that saves me a lot of space. I also have a few just single 2-inch pots for my miscellaneous things like my rhubarb and agastache. I think I'm going to use this one for my various basils, and I think I just need these 2 flats, but I did pull out this 72 cell tray that I'm going to go ahead and wash just in case I decide that I want to plant more things, which is not unlikely to happen. So first I'm going to wash these up. I'm going to just be using dishwashing liquid and water. I'm not going to bleach them or anything, so let's hope for the best. After I have everything filled and I have my tags written down, I like to go in with my tags and mark everything before I even put seeds in. That way I can kind of plan like how many rows of each thing I want to do. And if I end up with not enough space or less space, it's better to know before I start popping any seeds in. Alright, so that's perfect. I have just enough space on this tray to do 2 rows for each of my types of flowers, so that makes it really easy. This 36 cell tray is going to be for all my basil. I'm going to do almost 2 full rows of each kind, except for Tulsi. I think I'm only going to need a few plants of those, because I don't use them for cut flowers and we don't need like a ton to eat. I just want to have some to dry for tea. So I think 3 plants should be plenty for that. Got 1 pot for Agastache, 1 pot for rhubarb. And for my tomatoes, I have these 4 cell containers that I filled up, but instead of using all 4 of these cells for one variety, I'm going to do a different variety in each of these cells. And it works out almost perfectly because I do have 13 varieties, so I'm gonna have 1 extra, so I'll just pop 1 into this single cell. So I'll be able to fit most of these in my 4 packs. So for my tomatoes, I've already planned out the number of each variety I want to plant based on how much space I think I'll have in the garden. And you can see for most of these, I'm just growing 2 or 3 of them. And I'm going to be doing the number of plants that I need in each of these cells. So let me just give you an example. I'll start with this one in the corner, which is the Principe Borghese. For this one, I am aiming for 2 plants in the end. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 4 seeds and I'm going to plant all 4 of them in this one cell, kind of trying to space them out a little bit. So hopefully you can see what they look like in there, in this cell. And this way I can just pluck out whatever germinates and pot it up later on. Tomato seeds are very easy to separate once they germinate, so because I only need like 2 to 3, I'm only doing 4, but really I think you can use this method up to like a dozen tomato seeds in here. It saves you a lot of space, especially say like you want to grow like 6 of one variety. Instead of having 6 different pots, you can put everything in this one cell, and then once they germinate, you can go in and separate them and move them into separate pots. It might seem a little bit fussy, but if you are short on space, this really can help you. I'm cutting the space that I need by half by doing it this way, but if you were wanting to grow 6 or even a dozen of one variety, you could really significantly cut the space that you need for these plants, at least for a couple of weeks. Of course, they can't stay crowded forever, but it'll be about 2 weeks before they're ready to separate out. And since this is the time of year where you need so much space under your grow lights or on your heat mats, this can be a really helpful method. So like I said, later on, I am going to separate these out and move them into individual pots. So I will show you that when it comes time to do that, but that's not going to be for a little bit. And by the time they're ready for that, it's also going to start getting a lot warmer out and a lot of things can start living outside. I find that it just helps a lot with saving space indoors during this really busy time when I have so many things going on. And if I want to grow all these varieties of things, then I have to find a way to make it work. We have a local grower in our area that sells a lot of plant starts, and I've been in their greenhouse kind of like in the earlier part of the season, and I know for a fact that this is actually the way that they grow their tomatoes. I've seen them with like little cells like this, and they would have like 2 to 3 dozen little tomato seedlings in there. And as long as you separate them out later on, it's not a problem. They don't really need a lot of space or nutrients when they have first germinated, so you don't need to worry about that. Another great thing about this method is that it can help you save on seed. So for example, these are my most expensive tomato seeds, these BHN ones. So I really try to be stingy with them, and I'm aiming for 2 plants in the end for this, and I only put 3 seeds in there. And if I was doing a big number of these, instead of doing 2 to 3 seeds in each cell, I can just do a whole bunch, and there's basically no waste, because when you're separating them out, you can take whatever has germinated and put it into its own pot. So again, just because I'm doing a couple, it might not quite be saving me as much space or money, but I just wanted to mention that in case you are in a slightly different position where this can be even more beneficial. So I went ahead and finished sowing all of my tomato seeds and also my basil seeds, and I just took a little bit of soil and did a light layer on my tomato seeds, and I tried to make an even lighter layer on the basil seeds just because they are very tiny. And now I'm going to move on to my other tray where I'm going to start a lot of flowers. One thing that I've learned about growing flowers from seed is that they can be a little bit trickier than vegetables. First of all, most of them are a lot tinier than vegetable seeds. And second of all, a lot of them have special requirements for germinating, whether you need to see if they need to be cold stratified. Some of them need darkness to germinate, some of them need light to germinate. So just make sure you check the back of your packet or do some research to see if the seeds that you're starting for flowers need any special treatment like that. It actually turns out that a lot of the flower seeds that I was starting that day did need light to germinate, so I am trying just to surface sow them, and I'll lightly press them into the soil with my finger just to make sure that they have good contact. And I won't be covering these with soil, I'll just cover them with vermiculite later on. So the coleus, alyssum, rudbeckia, and straw flowers all needed light to germinate, and the only ones that didn't were the dahlia seeds. The dahlia seeds are also a lot larger than a lot of the other flower seeds, so I'm just going in and making a little divot in these little cells so that the seeds have a place to go. The seeds kind of look like zinnia seeds, and if you've never grown dahlias from seeds, I've mentioned this in a lot of my videos just because I think it's so fascinating, but in case you're new here, dahlias don't grow true to the parent plant when you grow them from seeds, so it's kind of a mystery as to like what color or shape you're gonna get, and that just makes it really fun. It's kind of like a mystery box in a flower. And most people do actually grow dahlias from tubers because that way you get the exact variety that you're looking for. Those will be clones of the parent plants. So if you want a specific variety, then tubers are the way to go. But growing dahlias from seeds is really fun, really easy, and much more affordable as well. So if you're not quite as picky and you want dahlias but you don't really care what kind it is, then growing from seed is a really good route to go. When you're buying dahlia tubers, a single tuber can be a few dollars up to like $15, and you'll get one plant from there, and they will multiply over time. But compared to buying just a pack of dahlia seeds where I can grow like 50 plants for just $3 or $4, for me it's a no-brainer. Once I finish sowing all my seeds, I'm covering up the dahlia seeds with a little bit more soil just to make sure they are covered. And then for the rest of my seeds, since they need light to germinate, I'm covering them with vermiculite so that light can still get through to them. And this also helps to control the moisture level so that they don't dry out since they are right on the surface. So that's it for today's video. I planted so many seeds, and it's kind of incredible to think that just these 2 flats of seeds can potentially become so many flowers and so much food. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.